Halloween is never just costumes and candy. It's the night the dead walk closest to the living. The night when spirits roam, when doors creak without wind, and when stories step out of legend to walk beside you. Tonight, those stories have found you. Welcome to Whispers After Dark, where the shadows speak and the night listens. So settle down by the fire and join us for a night of tales from the dark. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and ring the bell. Because the moment the whispers begin, there's no turning back. There are Halloweens when the dead edge closer to the roadside, when a cemetery's rust-flaked gates open just wide enough for something lost to wander out. On nights like these, a pale figure might step into your headlights, thumb trembling in the wind, and you'll think you're doing a kindness by slowing down. The listener sent me the tale that follows. I'm not sure I believe every detail, but I'll pass it on exactly as he wrote it. Decide for yourself. This is The Girl in the White Dress. My name's Daniel. My wife Sarah and I were driving home from a Halloween potluck at our church last October, October 28th, 11:43 p.m. to be exact, when we first saw her. She was standing just outside Green Meadow Cemetery, shivering beneath a copper street lamp. The light made her look almost sepia, like an old photograph brought to life. Her dress was white, but not the kind anyone wears anymore. High collar, puffed sleeves, fabric yellowing at the seams, the hem stained gray as if she'd walked through miles of dust. Chestnut hair clung damp against her face, and her eyes, so startlingly ice blue they seemed to glow, were red from crying, though no tears fell. And on her feet, only one shoe. An old blue tennis shoe, scuffed at the toe, laces trailing like she'd been running until the earth swallowed the other. Sarah's hand shot out, squeezing my arm. "Daniel, stop." Before I could talk myself out of it, I slowed. The girl didn't wave or motion. She just stood there with her pale blue cardigan folded tight to her chest, trembling like she'd been waiting all night for someone to see her. There was a moment of hesitation, and then she opened the door. When she slid into the back seat, the temperature dropped, and a smell drifted in with her. Damp autumn leaves crushed underfoot, mixed with the faint sweetness of lilac perfume, the kind you only find in bottles hidden at the back of old dressers. She whispered an address on Juniper Lane. Her voice was fragile, barely audible, and after that she said nothing, just stared out the window, shoulders rising now and then with a soundless sob. I tried the radio for background noise, but every station fuzzed with static until I turned it off. For 10 minutes the car held nothing but the rhythm of the tires on asphalt and the quiet, hitching breaths of our passenger. When I eased to a stop outside the house on Juniper Lane, Sarah turned to tell her we'd arrived. The back seat was empty, the door still locked, no indentation in the upholstery, not even the sound of fabric brushing past us as she vanished. We sat frozen, my wife whispering a prayer under her breath. Then Sarah noticed a single damp leaf pressed against the seat, veins dark as if it had been plucked straight from the grave. 2 nights later, October 30th, 11:50 p.m., we passed Green Meadow again, and there she was, same pale figure beneath the street lamp, same white dress, same solitary shoe. Logic told me to keep driving. Curiosity, or maybe guilt, pressed my foot to the brake. She climbed in once more, gave the same address, wept the same soundless sobs. This time she disappeared sooner at the final turn before Juniper Lane. Sarah swore the temperature plunged, so sharp her breath frosted the glass. By Halloween night, the cemetery was wrapped in fog so thick the headstones looked like hunched shadows straining against the dark. Neither of us said it out loud, but we both felt it. That tug in our chests like something unfinished was waiting for us there. The road itself seemed to breathe, drawing us back. We passed Green Meadow once just before 11, headlights cutting through the mist. Nothing. Just iron gates sweating rust and the occasional scrape of wind through dead branches. Sarah kept craning her neck toward the lamppost, whispering that she thought she saw movement. I pressed the accelerator, but my stomach clenched like I'd left something undone. The second time we circled back, closer to midnight, the fog had thickened into a wall. We drove slow, windows cracked as if we might hear her before we saw her. Still nothing. Just silence too heavy to be ordinary. Sarah gripped my hand and said, "She's out there. I know she is." I wanted to argue, but I couldn't. The air felt charged, like the pause before lightning finds the ground. We thought about heading home, but the road kept pulling us back toward the gates. Once more, we made the drive to the cemetery. At 12:07 a.m., there she was, nearer the gate this time. The lamplight showed pale around her. Her white dress hung heavy, mud clinging to its hem, but the blue shoe still clung stubbornly to one pale foot. I don't know why we stopped again, maybe because deep down we knew this was the night she'd been waiting for. She spoke only once on that final ride. Her lips parted, voice hoarse but steady. "Home, please. I'm so tired." When we pulled into the driveway on Juniper Lane, she lingered in the seat, trembling, eyes locked on the house as if she feared crossing the threshold. Sarah stepped out, circled to the rear door, and opened it wide. Moonlight spilled into the back seat. The girl was gone, but the air filled with the thick perfume of lilacs. On the floorboard lay the girl's blue tennis shoe. We carried it to the porch. The light flicked on, revealing a stooped woman in a threadbare robe. She opened the door just enough for her tired eyes to fall on the shoe in Sarah's hands. And in that instant, her whole body seemed to buckle, grief giving way to something like relief. "Did you pick her up at the graveyard?" she rasped. We nodded. 3 times, I told her. "But she made it all the way home tonight." The woman smiled, a sad, trembling smile, and reached for a locket at her throat and passed it to my wife. Inside was the same girl, smiling, alive, happy. That was my daughter, Cynthia. She was taken, vanished, 31 Halloweens ago. All we found the night she vanished was her shoe. She said. Sarah handed her back the locket. Her voice cracked as she wiped her face. Her body was found in Green Meadow 4 months later. She cradled the dusty sneaker like it was made of glass and said in a shaky voice, "It's taken 31 years, but she made it home tonight. Thank you. Thank you for stopping." She closed the door before we could reply. Through the etched glass, we saw her sink to her knees, shoulders shaking as she clutched the shoe to her chest. And as we backed out of the driveway, Sarah gasped and pointed. In the second-story window stood the girl in the white dress, her ice-blue eyes shining. She smiled, raised a hand, and waved goodbye. I haven't driven that road since. So if you ever see a lone girl in a white dress standing outside a cemetery on Halloween, don't dismiss her. I'm not saying you should stop, but sometimes the kindest thing you can do is give a ghost a ride home, because maybe all she needs is someone to help her find her way back. There are midnights when the highway bends in ways it shouldn't, where signs appear that weren't there an hour ago, and lights flicker in places that should be dead dark. Some carnivals only exist one night a year, and the price of entry is never what you think. One listener made the mistake of stopping at one of them. He told me what happened before the strings went taut and the lights burned out. This is the Midnight Carnival. My name's Caleb Foster, and I hadn't been to a carnival since I was 12. But on Halloween a few years back, just past 11:30 p.m., I was cruising home on a lonely stretch of highway when I saw it. A string of neon arrows flickering in the mist off the shoulder at mile marker 147. They pulsed one after the other like they were waiting for me. A wooden sign had been propped beside the exit, hand-painted and half-rotting, Murter Marvel's Carnival, one night only. I figured why not. I was tired, wired on gas station coffee, and craving anything that felt remotely human after 13 hours alone with country static. The access road twisted off the map and ended in a gravel lot I swear wasn't there during daylight. But the carnival was. Rusted rides creaked in the wind. Rows of crooked game booths leaned under rotting canvas. Strands of flickering bulbs buzzed overhead like swarming fireflies. It smelled like burnt sugar, motor oil, and something else. Something older. Still, I walked in, paid my $5 to a dead-eyed teen in a band jacket, and tried to enjoy myself. Bought a funnel cake the size of a hubcap, chased it with cotton candy that melted like spider webs in my mouth. I wandered down the midway, laughing to myself when I missed 3 straight throws at the bottle toss. The prizes were weird. Porcelain dolls with stitched mouths, taxidermy bats in mason jars, masks that looked suspiciously human, but I chalked it up to carnival kitsch. I bought a hot dog too, the works, and washed it down with a Coke. The crowd was thin, almost spectral. Everyone wore costumes, but no one talked. I asked a tall guy in a plague doctor mask where the corn dogs were. He just pointed to booth next to Funhouse, then turned and walked away without a word. Still, the place had a kind of gravity, like it remembered every kid who ever stepped onto a midway with greasy fingers and wide eyes. That's when I saw the velvet tent at the edge of the grounds just past the corn dog hut in the Funhouse. It didn't look like much from the outside. Wilted maroon fabric, gold-fringed, decaying into dust. But the sign nailed to the entrance was new. Sharp black paint and curling script read, "The Marionette, free show at midnight." A small wooden stage waited inside, surrounded by silence. Lanterns swayed overhead, burning low and orange. At the center of the stage hung a single marionette, wooden, jointed, almost life-sized, suspended by crimson threads that vanished into the shadows above. Its limbs dangled limp, head cocked to the side like it was listening. I started to leave. That's when the barker stepped out from behind the curtain. He wore a crushed top hat, a long-tail purple velvet coat with tattered ruffles at the cuffs and gloves too small for his hands. His smile looked carved. "Go on," he said, voice like a rusted gate. "Make him dance. First pull is free." He handed me the wooden control bar, cool to the touch, worn smooth by who knows how many hands. I hesitated, then pulled the left string. My shoulder jerked upward with a snap, not the puppet's, mine. Pain flared. I dropped the bar, or tried to. My hands wouldn't let go. The wood had splintered at the edges, thin crimson fibers coiling around my fingers, burrowing into the skin like thread into cloth. I screamed. The puppet remained still, until its head slowly lifted, eyes meeting mine. Eyes that looked just like mine. The barker tipped his hat. "Every show needs a star," he whispered, then laughed. It pierced the darkened tent like nails on a chalkboard. I felt something pull upward. My feet scraped the dirt. My spine arched unnaturally. The threads, no longer fibers, but living red tendrils, tightened around my wrists, ankles, neck. They sank deeper, threading into my veins. My heartbeat slowed, and then synced to something else. Below me, the puppet straightened, flesh-colored now, breathing, smiling. It reached up, unhooked itself, and dropped from the stage with my walk, my gait, my eyes. The lanterns dimmed. The barker clapped once, and the puppet in my skin bowed to the empty tent, then strode out into the Halloween night, into my life, twirling my truck keys on his finger. I tried to scream, couldn't. My jaw hung slack. Above me, dim outlines moved in the gloom. Dozens, maybe hundreds of shapes, dangling, swaying slightly. I wasn't the first. I wouldn't be the last. I was up there, in that velvet dark. The lights flicker on once a year, and a new sign goes up on the tent. The name changes. Sometimes it's the puppet's choice. Sometimes the strings of fate. But the tent always opens. The barker always waits. And the puppet always gets to leave. Last Halloween, it was finally my turn. But I didn't walk out in my own skin. I left in someone else's body, with someone else's family, and now I live each day knowing I'm living someone else's life. I wake up beside a woman who's supposed to be my wife. I have 2 children I don't recognize. They look at me like I've changed. And they're right. I have. So if you're ever driving on Halloween night and see a crooked arrow pointing toward a carnival that shouldn't be there, keep driving. No matter how loud the music plays, no matter how sweet the air smells. Because once you take hold of the strings, they pull back. There are Halloweens when the moon doesn't just rise, it watches. Nights when the air goes still, the fog holds its breath, and the shadows in the tree line feel older than the trees themselves. One listener sent me his story from a stretch of backcountry near Ash Creek. He didn't ask me to tell it for fame, just to leave a warning. One listener sent me his story from a stretch of backcountry near Ash Creek. He said he's done trying to justify what he's become. He just can't carry the guilt alone anymore. According to him, it's not something he chose, but it is something he can't stop. I'm not sure if I believe him, but I'll tell it exactly the way he wrote it. You can decide for yourself. This is Werewolf Moon. My name's Logan. I'm a firefighter with Station 33. I've seen wildfires lick the sky and accident scenes that haunt me long after the sirens fade, but nothing like what happened last Halloween. It started with a call about livestock, possible animal attack, Ash Creek Road, multiple sheep down. Dispatch thought it was a mountain lion, maybe a bear, but when we rolled up on the pasture, what we found looked like a massacre. The sheep weren't killed, they were torn apart. Some were half-eaten, others barely touched. Fencing had been ripped open like foil. One of the guys spotted prints, bare human footprints leading in from the woods. But they didn't leave the way they came. What left that field walked on paws the size of dinner plates. I should have left it to wildlife services, but something about the scene felt wrong, like unfinished business. And truth is, I'd been restless ever since the barn fire 2 weeks earlier, the one where we found the drifter's body, curled up in the ashes like he'd never tried to escape. He was covered in scratch marks, not from fire, from claws. The report said accidental death, but his face haunted me. I looked into it, found out he'd been staying in an old hunting shack up by the creek bend, just past the tree line. So the night after the livestock call, October 31st, I went back up alone. Took a borrowed tranquilizer rifle. Said it was curiosity, but I think part of me already knew. The shack was dark, the air too still, but something inside had moved through recently. Bedding turned, claw marks on the frame, broken chains at the headpost, and in the far corner, an old leather collar and a lockbox with scorched edges. I picked it up, and the metal burned cold. Inside was a scorched journal, and inside were ramblings about being a werewolf. And just for a second, I remembered something I hadn't thought about in years. I was 16, out behind a convenience store with friends. A stray dog had come limping out of the woods, thin, quiet, watching. I reached down to feed it part of my sandwich, and it lunged, bit my hand deep. The ER doctor called it just a bad dog bite. Said I was lucky it didn't go for my throat. They gave me shots and sent me home. But for days after, I had fevers, nightmares. I thought I saw yellow eyes in the window. My folks said it was just trauma. Now I wasn't so sure. That's when I smelled it, musk and metal and something sour behind the nose. The air turned heavy. I stepped outside and looked up just as the clouds broke, moon full and orange as a harvest lantern. That was the moment. I didn't trip, I didn't fall, I changed. Bones collapsed and rebuilt, nerves rewired with fire. My skin tore itself apart and healed in the same breath. My scream pitched into a howl, and somewhere deep down I liked it. The hunt that followed wasn't thought, it was instinct. When I woke, I was naked, mud-caked, and bloody by the creek. The rifle bent into a shape no human could have forced. Something had claimed me, and it wasn't done. The shack was empty when I went back. The collar was gone. But the initials hadn't been a coincidence. Whatever cursed that drifter found its next host. Maybe that fire wasn't an accident. Maybe the drifter let himself burn when he couldn't fight it anymore. I filed my report and left out the part about me. But since that night, Every reflective surface shows me what's waiting just beneath the skin. A second set of eyes, yellow predatory just behind mine. Not always visible, but always there. Now it's Halloween again. The moon's already risen. I can feel the pull in my spine, the slow rewiring of my body. I've locked myself in the station tool shed, chains wrapped tight around a steel support beam. I've warned my crew not to call, but I don't know if it'll be enough this time. So if you're anywhere near Ash Creek tonight and you hear something howling, not a coyote, not a dog, stay inside, lock your doors, don't answer strange knocks. And if you see a firefighter badge glinting beneath fur and fangs, run, because the Halloween moon is up and I'm not the one in control anymore. There are houses that sleep all year with their shutters drawn and their walls full of whispers until Halloween. That's when the locks unclick on their own, the lights burn without wires, and the air inside hums with the weight of unfinished business. Some homes don't want to be sold. They want to choose who stays. The story I'm about to tell was sent by a man from Louisiana who swore it was true. He didn't care if anyone believed him, only that the next buyer gets a warning. This is Midnight Showings Only. My name is Alex. I work in real estate, flipping historic properties when the market is right. I thought I'd seen it all: rotted floor joists, collapsing chimneys, homes crawling with mold. Then I was called to the Marrowbone estate. It had been empty for decades. The heirs insisted the closing happen on Halloween night at midnight. Not before, not after. Exactly at midnight. I thought it was odd, but I get strange clients sometimes. The drive up was a tunnel of wet branches scraping the car roof like fingernails. The house stood waiting behind a veil of vines, its windows hollow, its roof hunched like tired shoulders. Rain tapped steadily on the porch railings, and the air smelled faintly of iron, as though something had already bled into the soil. Inside, the foyer breathed damp roses, lemon oil, and something sour beneath it all, like rot polished over and forgotten. Candle bulbs burned in sconces even though the power had been cut for years. Every board groaned as though it remembered footsteps too well. The wallpaper sweated with damp. I moved deeper, and the house seemed to lengthen itself. Halls stretched twice their size, carpets sagged with hidden damp, and portraits along the walls shifted in the corner of my eye. Dust floated sideways, tugged as if by breath. In the library, a ledger lay open on a desk, its pages crawling with names scored out in rust-colored lines. A pen rested on the blotter, still wet, a bead of red trembling at the tip. The sound of voices drifted through the house, flat and thin, like recordings warped by age. They echoed my name, urging me toward the ballroom, though the corridor twisted endlessly until I was dragged back to the library again. The ledger waited, a blank line beneath my name already etched in crimson. Above me, chains rattled. Somewhere deep within the walls, a laugh rose, thin and piercing, like nails dragged across a blackboard. I found coats on the floorboards, still warm, as if their owners had been erased mid-step. I ran for the door, but every hall folded inward, pushing me back toward the desk. The air grew thick. Dust gathered into silhouettes, empty suits, wedding gowns with no bodies, children's play clothes drifting on invisible hooks. The house ticked like a heartbeat. Midnight was near. From the vents, a whisper came, layered, metallic, endless. Sign the contract. My phone glowed only with the date, letters burning blood orange, October 31st. Windows cracked when I struck them, then healed, knitting themselves back together like broken bone. The walls pulsed, plaster contracting as though the house was breathing me in. When the pen touched my hand, it was cold as ice water. My name spread itself across the page. The ink climbed into my veins, threading upward like frost on glass. The house sighed, long and low. The halls shrank back to their proper size. The coats were gone. The front door now stood ajar, rain misting through. Outside, the for sale sign had changed. My photograph smiled back at me. The eyes were too bright. The teeth were too sharp. Beneath it, new letters glowed as if cut from fire. Midnight showing. One night only, I should have fled. Instead, the house pulled me back. I sat at the library desk, the ledger spread before me, a pen waiting in my hand. The air smelled of roses gone rotten. The walls hummed with anticipation. Midnight stretched long, then reset, then began again. And soon, footsteps scraped across the porch. Laughter too thin to last carried through the hall. The front door opened like a mouth ready to feed. The house had chosen new buyers. I couldn't warn them. The house wouldn't let me. If you ever see a mansion advertising midnight showings on Halloween night, don't step inside. Because what's for sale isn't the house, it's you. And the price it pays is everything you'll never get back. Trust me, I know. And when the clock strikes midnight, I'll be waiting. This concludes our story time for tonight. I hope you enjoyed these chilling Halloween tales, and thank you for spending your night with us here at Whispers After Dark. Though the stories end, the shadows never truly fade, and sometimes Halloween has a way of lingering long after the candles burn out. Be sure to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you don't miss next week's journey into the dark. Our playlist below is filled with more haunted nights, eerie campfire stories, and gothic audiobooks to keep you company until then. Until next time, stay curious, stay cautious, and beware of the Whispers After Dark.